Every day, at the same minute on the world clock, the internet goes dark for 60 minutes. Not country by country. Not by choice. The same instant everywhere, which means for a bakery in Lisbon, it lands in the middle of the lunch rush, and for a man in Auckland, it lands somewhere inside a dream he won't remember losing. That's the rule. 1 hour, once a day, same global minute, no local negotiation. The servers still exist, the phones still exist. The cables are still sitting in the walls exactly where they were yesterday. For 60 minutes, none of it can talk to any of the rest of it. For the first few seconds, nothing looks different. Screens still glow, apps still open. It's only when you try to do something that needs an answer from somewhere else that the hour introduces itself. The first place this breaks isn't social media. It's the card reader. A cashier in a coffee shop watches the little wheel spin on the payment terminal, waiting for a network that isn't there to say yes. Behind her, a line of people pat their pockets for a wallet they stopped needing years ago. Somewhere in that line, someone remembers they have exactly $6 in cash, and for one strange minute, cash is the only currency that still works. Not because it's worth more, because it doesn't have to ask permission. That's the part people get wrong at first. They assume a dead internet mostly means dead entertainment. No scrolling, no streaming, some mild boredom. What actually goes quiet is smaller and busier than that. The systems nobody thinks of as internet because they never had to. Delivery apps freeze mid-route, leaving a driver staring at a map that was updating a second ago and is now just a picture. A hospital's non-critical scheduling software hangs on a loading screen, while somewhere down the hall, the machines that actually keep people alive keep running exactly like they're supposed to, because someone, years ago, had the foresight to build those on their own private wiring instead of trusting the open internet with something that important. The hour doesn't expose weakness evenly. It exposes exactly which systems were built to survive without permission and which ones were built assuming permission would always be granted. Because the outage is timed to the same instant globally, the hour doesn't hit the same kind of moment twice. In Seoul, it might land during a school day, and a classroom's interactive board goes dark mid-lesson, so a teacher who hasn't used a whiteboard marker in a decade has to remember how. In Sao Paulo, it might land during a first date, which turns out to be the best possible thing that could happen to a first date, since neither person can check their phone under the table anymore. In Toronto, it might land at 3 in the morning, doing nothing to anyone except the servers that were quietly running backups they'll now have to reschedule. The same rule, applied at the same second everywhere, produces a completely different experience depending on what a country happened to be doing at that moment. The internet turns out to be one thing. The hour it goes missing is 1,000 different hours. Somewhere in the second week, the actual damage becomes clear, and it isn't the damage anyone predicted on day one. The obvious losers are obvious. Rideshare apps, food delivery, anything billed by the live minute. Any business built on the assumption that the connection is a constant, not a favor. Stock trading systems that operate on speed rather than judgment have to build in a blackout window, which some quietly admit is the healthiest thing that's happened to the market in years, since it removes exactly 60 minutes of decisions made faster than any human could actually think them through. The less obvious losers are the software companies that never built an offline mode because they never needed one. Suddenly, "Does this work without a connection?" becomes the single most valuable line in a job description. And the engineers who spent careers building for spotty airplane Wi-Fi or rural mobile signal go from afterthought to essential almost overnight. A skill nobody wanted a year ago is suddenly the most interviewed for skill on the market. The winners are stranger and slower to notice themselves winning. Battery-powered radios, printed newspapers, board games, physical decks of cards, actual paper maps. All of it starts selling again, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. Because for 1 hour a day, analog isn't quaint. It's the only thing on the shelf that works without asking anyone's permission. A cafe that keeps a hand-crank coffee grinder behind the counter, just in case, ends up busier during the hour than the rest of the day, because people have started scheduling around it instead of resenting it. That's the shift nobody predicted correctly. At first, everyone assumed the hour would simply be endured, a daily inconvenience people would grumble through until the connection returned. Instead, people start building toward it. Restaurants advertise candlelit seating specifically inside the hour. Gyms notice a spike right before it starts, since it turns out an hour with no notifications is the ideal hour to actually finish a workout. Parents notice their kids ask fewer questions about screens and more questions about everything else for exactly 60 minutes because there's finally nothing better on offer. None of this fixes anything by itself. It just reveals that a large amount of what people call addiction to their phones was never really about wanting the phone. It was about there being nothing else immediately available. Take away the option, even briefly, and people reach for whatever's next in line without much of a fight. The overlooked cost sits quietly underneath all of this convenience-turned ritual. Trust that used to require patience gets replaced with trust that requires a connection, and the hour keeps reminding everyone how thin that second kind of trust actually is. A delivery isn't late anymore because a driver is late. It's late because a network somewhere didn't answer. A conversation doesn't end because two people ran out of things to say. It ends because a call dropped mid-sentence, and neither person can be sure if the other one meant to keep talking. The hour doesn't make people less connected to each other. It makes it obvious how much of that connection was quietly outsourced to something that could, and eventually does, just stop working, for reasons no one in the room can control. By the time the rhythm settles in, the hour stops being an outage at all, in the way people talk about it. It becomes a fixture, the way lunch is a fixture, or a commute is a fixture, something built around rather than fought. Offices stop scheduling anything important inside it. Cloud documents autosave 2 minutes before it hits, a habit that took less than a month to become instinct. Kids born after the rules started will grow up assuming this is just what a day is. Work, life, and 1 hour where the world quietly agrees to stop checking in on itself. Back in that same coffee shop, the cashier doesn't wait for the card reader to spin anymore. There's a small cash drawer by the register now, restocked every morning, used for exactly 1 hour, and forgotten the other 23. The line doesn't groan the way it used to. People just reach for a coin instead of a card, the way people used to, before anyone thought to ask a network's permission to buy a coffee. Nothing about the internet's usefulness changed. What changed is the discovery that most of what people called dependence was really just default. The easiest option, not the only one. Take it away for exactly 1 hour a day, at exactly the same global minute, and it turns out the world doesn't fall apart waiting for the connection to come back. It just remembers, for 60 minutes at a time, everything it already knew how to do without one.